Welcome back to Inverted Aviators RC. Are you having a super fun time with your UMX Voodoo and are you trying to make some modifications? Well, look no further. In this video, we're going to be adding flaps to the UMX Voodoo. Really quick before we get into this mod, this entire process was streamed on YouTube, so if you want to watch me work on projects like this in the future, make sure to join our Discord so you get notifications every time I start streaming. Also, this process took about 8 hours of live streaming, and I cut it down into about 30 minutes. So if you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe because it's our goal to get to 1,000 subscribers by Christmas, and we're really close and we need your help. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. So we're going to start off by taking out the top. Just make sure that if you did this FPV mod, you're not accidentally yanking any wires here. But it is pretty easy. Just take everything off. And then you've also got the aileron wires here that just need to be unplugged from the board. And that should be just about that. We're not going to need this battery hatch until the very end pretty much. But I'm also going to take off these landing gears because they're just going to get in the way. Also take off the propeller, A, for safety, but B, it's just going to get in the way as well. First step is going to be actually cutting the flaps in, and thankfully there are little lines here on the plane. So as you can see, there's these lines is exactly where we're going to be cutting the flaps in. So we don't have to eyeball it or anything. Just follow this furthest straight line. It should be pretty easy. I'm not going to use the heated up paperclip method. I'm just going to use an X-Acto knife just because we don't want to cauterize this edge. We just want to make a clean cut. So I'm going to get a lot of knife out here and just try to go straight across as much as I can. Okay, that's one. I'm going to use this ruler because that's a great idea, not just eyeballing it. And gonna go straight across. I picked a ruler that matches the color scheme, but we're just gonna line it up and then make a little score cut just so I make sure I get everything right. And we're gonna make a whole bunch of light low cuts because we don't need to mar this foam with this process. We just need to slowly dig more and more. And this is what we're looking for. You can see it's not all the way through at all. It's just making very light little cuts, and slowly but surely we're gonna make our way through. So just this will take some time. That's all the way out. Now we're just missing this little edge here. Bam. Okay, that's one flap out. So you can see, just nice and easy. Smooth cut all the way through. And I'm just going to repeat this process on the other side, just trying to cut straight down. But yeah, that's all we're going to do. That was pretty smooth. We have a Voodoo without any flaps. Next we're going to do is round out the edges of these flaps because right now they fit in perfectly as if they were just cut out, and that's great if they're not flaps, but when we have flaps we're going to want them to rotate down, and if there's an exact match in between this surface and the flap surface we won't get any movement out of them. So we're just going to cut a notch into this side and this bottom side which allow it to rotate up and down. And so this is going to involve being on the edge of the table. We're going to just cut with your knife. We're going to angle it just a little bit and we're going to slide it across like this. We're going to make sure your fingers are out of the way because you're going to be using a whole lot of knife because we're going to be at a very shallow angle here. I'm going to keep these fingers out of the way because if I don't, they're going to get cut. So I'm just going to start at the very top here. So you can see now we've got some space. I'm going to take a little more off of it, but now instead of it being super sharp on the top, now we can have some space for movement. Go slow, don't need to go fast. So yeah, as you can see now we've got a nice little edge here. So you can see we've got a more rounded edge which will allow us to pivot on the wing, and that looks fine. So I'm going to just repeat the process on this side. So I'm going to take a little sandpaper, and this is obviously foam, so you don't want to just like hack away at it, but I'm just going to try and round off these corners a little more, make them a little smoother. See, now we've got a nice smooth edge here, which a hinge right in the end of that will be able to rotate quite nice. Good, now it's all smooth too. We now have this part, which these flaps will fit in here. And again, the whole point of cutting these notches is you can see there's a little bit of white in between that you can now rotate down, and there's no interference in between the bottom edge of the flap and the bottom edge of the wing. There are these really little nylon hinges. So you got them off Amazon. You can get like, I don't know, 20 for $8. What we are gonna do is try to put a hinge right in the middle of this cut we made, like right on this top part, and then do the same thing on this side, and then we'll be able to make some nice hinge action out of this. So I'm gonna start with putting it into this flap itself. And since my X-Acto knife, the blade is pretty much the width of these hinges, I might be able to just cut into them a little bit. Now I'm going to just poke a little hole. We don't need to go super far in. And then if I go straight in as possible without cutting into the outer side, I could even just cut this side just a little shorter. I'll cut it. There's 3 holes here. I'll cut it down to maybe 2. And then we can just kind of fish the hinge in. As you can see, that's kind of the idea, is that once we get these hinges in on both sides, then we can kind of get going like that. But I'm going to keep on working on this first one. But if we can get this hinge to sit as close to this curve as we can, then we'll be able to, it'll pivot the best. So I'll say that one's good, and we're going to hot glue these in just so they stay perfectly in place. So I'm going to repeat that for the other side here. I'm just going to try to line it up as much as I can. I want this next hinge to be right in line with this pin, so go straight across, and that way there's no extra friction that comes from when this thing moves. There, that one worked a little bit better. We're going to want to line up these hinges with the plane itself so we can get a nice little movement out of it. Put the flap in place with the hinges hanging up, and then we're going to make marks on either side of the hinges. So now we can see right where these hinges should be lining up. And so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put an X-Acto knife straight in, hopefully right to the middle of this line we marked out. And I'm going to take the depth of this hinge and make that the depth of my X-Acto knife. So I know that I'm not going to go too deep, because there's no reason. So if I know if I go in that depth, I will be all the way in. So I'm going to reinstall these hinges. Okay, so we got a hinge in there, and then if we have flaps, they can pull all the way down like that. And let's see, that would mean that we're rubbing a little bit on this aileron, which just means you have to take an X-Acto knife and kind of file it down. But I'm going to apply a little bit of hot glue to the plain side hinge, and then I'm just going to slide in as far as I can go. And then once the hinge is lined up a little outside of this back wall, I'm going to pull it out and then wiggle it a whole bunch so that the hot glue doesn't actually glue the hinge in one place. It's going to be actually able to move. Apply a little bit on here. We don't need a whole ton, because again, this is a small hinge, and we're just going to pop it in there. That even might be too much. I'm going to try to salvage some, and we're going to push it in as far as it goes, pull it out a little bit, and then wipe off any of this excess, and then move the hinge around so that the hot glue doesn't accidentally, glue it in place. There, and that should be good. So again, you don't need a whole lot of hot glue, because you're pushing this into such a small place that if you have any extra, it's just going to glob out and kind of cover up all your stuff here, and I don't want that. Just applying a tiny bit of hot glue both to the ends of these 2 hinges, and then sliding on the flap. And so you have to be quick, but again, just a tiny bit to both sides, Then just move the flaps on, just move it around. Also, that hot glue will cause a little bit of tackiness for the hinge. You can just keep moving it around. We got a hinge that sits right in the middle. I mean, you can move it up and move it down. This receiver, according to eFlight, is a 4-channel receiver that also has safe. So it's a 5-channel receiver. However, we don't have access to that 5th channel. It's a digital 5th channel, as far as I understand it, meaning your transmitter can talk to this receiver and you can turn on and off safe, but there's no port on here. Like, you can't turn off safe and actually use this channel, which is annoying because it's not then a 5-channel. In my opinion, it's a 4-channel with safe. We need at least 5 channels because we have throttle, aileron, elevator, and rudder, and then a 5th would be flaps. So we actually need to change over to this receiver that we have from the UMX Turbo Timber Evolution, which we took out and put an 8-channel in that plane for the head tracker. But we do need to replace this receiver with that one because this is a 6-channel receiver, meaning it has the 4 normal ones plus 1 for flaps, and the 6th is safe. So we need to put this receiver in, cut off this receiver, and take off these 2 horns here. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and cut the glue off underneath and around the edges, not cutting the wires, although we are going to solder these wires onto the other board. But yeah, we're just going to try to cut off this board here, which I should also mention there are electronics underneath, like on this board. If it's sitting like this, there's stuff underneath, so I don't want to just like rake the bottom of this with the X-Acto knife. I want to make sure I'm cutting with a little bit of extra space, just so that I'm not damaging anything. And it looks like we are almost there. There we go. There, okay. So the receiver is now separated, and we are now just left with the rudder and the elevator. So taking off these back push rods will allow us to pull the receiver out more, giving us more space. And so I already did one of the sides on the call, but I'll try to do the other one here. So what I'm doing is the top part of the control horn is pretty flimsy. So I'm trying to bend it to match the shape of the actual arm and then kind of sliding it off. So in this case, the arm goes towards the plane and then hooks like towards me. So I'm just going to bend this horn clockwise and then slide it off the horn. Let's see. Oh, perfect. Okay. So as you can see, these little horns are super nice for like normal flying. They keep these rods in the right angle, but trying to maneuver these horns out of the way is going to be a nuisance. So I'm going to take a little wire cutter and cut straight down so I can remove them, but they should still stay in place when I actually like reinstall things. So I'm going to make sure I don't cut cord. I'm just going to take a little cut, and then I'm just going to carefully bend it, and then we should be able to just pop these out the top. We got one out. As you can see, all it was a tiny little cut, and then it got out. And I'm going to repeat that on the other side. Why is it? Okay, there we go. Now that I got these rods out, we can move them around a lot more, which is the whole goal. The idea is that we are now free on the back. We are free from these horns, and you can just move this board around. As you can see, we have the horn in here, and all I'm going to do is hold the arm in place so we're not accidentally twisting it, and I'm going to maneuver the board to get this out. So we need to go around like this. Again, holding the arm so that we don't break anything and pull it off. And it's almost, okay. Here's the board. Board is completely off. Again, this still works just fine, so don't get rid of this. This is just a nice 5-channel board that will be put to use. I'm gonna get small heat shrink is what I'm gonna call it. Flux everything up to make solder flow. And then of course, don't forget this. You don't need a whole lot of heat shrink because it's not really a big joint, but you can just slide this on and make it go as far back as you can so it doesn't accidentally shrink. And then solder. That should be fine. Just solder it on straight on, and I'm just gonna put these over it. So I'm just kind of transferring these motor wires. And thankfully they're all from E-flite, so I'm just connecting red to red, blue to blue, black to black. And also, since these are ESC wires, if for whatever reason the motor spins the wrong way, you can just flip these around. Make sure you got the right wiring and stuff. So I'm going to do that, cut these, but I'm going to then strip this side, strip these, solder them together. Quick just to look at these solder joints. So as you can see, this blue one, so there's clearly two different sides. There's this top part and the bottom part, which they're sticking together, but they're not actually like gelling together the way I want them to. If you get a look at this black wire in the middle, the black wire looks fine, and the red at the bottom, I put the most stuff on, so that one looks fine. So I'm just gonna go back and fix this blue wire. So now, as again, you can see that they're just all really well on there, not going anywhere. And I think I'm going to put it in line with this servo. So I'm going to take like two parallel lines that go from the edge of this servo and the back of this servo and go straight across and kind of cut it in there. So if I take a ruler and draw a straight line from there, and then at the back, something like that. So now we have little markings right here and here on where this servo is going to be sitting. It's right in the middle there. And so I'm going to lightly, and I mean lightly because we don't have a whole ton of extra space to work with, I just want to cut it a little bit into the wing. If I go here and just trace the shape there. And now I'm just going to be kind of chipping out at this little box I made. Just a little bit. We don't need to go deep at all. Alright, so now I got this really nice little grid here of really lightly cut foam, and I'm just going to take a tweezers and just try to pick out a little bit. But if you see from this angle, you can see on this side, the completed side, we've got the servo and the control horn in the back are exactly in the straight line. As you can see that, it's all straight. Now, on this other side, if I have this servo in like this, if you can see from this angle, this horn, if you go straight back, is nowhere near straight lined up with this, or you know, these are just not lined up. So what I need to do is remove this and just pop it over so it's straight in line. Hot glue in this little horn, which is going to be just a tiny amount of hot glue. That even might be too much. And just pop it in. Once it's straight, like your finger, and then wipe away the excess so you don't accidentally scorch everything, but that should be in there just fine. And now all we need is the servo arm itself. We're going to create a little hook on one side to go through this flap, and the other one is just going to go straight to this arm, and it should hopefully be a pretty quick bend here. So I'm going to just go to the very end and try to create 90 degrees, like that. See? And then I'm going to need to do another 90 degrees the other way, like that. Oh, it actually worked really well. So you can see on this servo, there is this loop in the middle. And if you need to trim out this wire, you can bend it so that it's a little more, it's like a mechanical trim. So you can pinch this and then the wire be a little shorter so it would bend up a little bit more. And it's just easier than trying to get this wire exactly the right distance. Instead, we can just make a little loop in it, and then we're able to kind of pinch it if we need it to be a little longer, a little bit shorter. Take it, bend it. I'll actually go closer to one side. Bend it straight up. Bend it over. I'll give it a little extra thickness just to go back down. Okay, so I got a little loop in there. So now that I can pinch that if I need to kind of tighten in or mechanically alter this wire to make it longer or shorter. It's like that, and then I need to create just a secondary loop here at the end to connect it to the servo, and then we should be, I think, good to go. Okay, and then if I just fold this over. So now we've got the exact distance passed. So if we're back in, yeah, if we 90 degrees pretty much at this tape. So I'm gonna try to go exactly the same, on the same plane as this first L shape. So I'm gonna try to bend it like down and then go this way with it. Bend it straight down. And then I'm gonna try to make just as small a bend I did there the same idea here, where I just grab the very end of it and then bend this wire around it. And there, I have a nice little S curve, and just put on my safety squints. There we go. So, moment of truth, we've got, this is what our little wire looks like, and we're going to route this in, which we're going to want to be sitting this way, so we're going to fish in this wire like this, and if then we put that in there, that should be what we want. And we're going to put hot glue nowhere near these gears, because I don't want to mess that up again. We're going to put them in there. And we're just going to fold this down. Okay, that looks like it's all in there. I just said I was going to double-sided tape this second servo in because the first servo was really annoying with the hot glue, and I figured, well, why not? I can show off both sides of what you could potentially do. So I'm just going to cut a piece that's just big enough for the servo, and I'll probably trim it down even more, but as long as it fits in this little gap. So I'm going to just double-sided tape it in like this and fit it in. That looks fine. But this part I think is a little more important, getting this weight even on this side. Like, you're equally far away from the center of the fuselage. So I'm going to measure this distance, 31 millimeters-ish. But what I'm going to do is, you can see kind of on this side, this piece of servo tape, which goes from here all the way down into the middle. That's how the aileron servos are routed in. I'm going to peel it out, route the flap servo into that same channel so that everything looks clean on the bottom, and we can just tape down the servo tape so that it all looks clean in the end. So I'm just going to take a tweezers and gently peel away at this tape. We're going to start off by cutting a little channel straight up so that these servo wires can go right into this little channel. So I'm going to be very careful. Again, we don't want to cut any extra foam that we don't really need, but I'm going to cut just a tiny channel here. On this bottom side, I'm going to widen it down just a hair so I can fit these wires in really nicely. So it's just going to be probably inside of this tape mark, or at least I'm going to try to make it inside of this tape mark so everything can be covered in the end. But just a little bit. I don't need to take off a whole lot, but it's going to go from this point all the way into the middle is where I'm taking off. That should be more than enough. Underneath here, there is a hole, and I'm going to try to route these wires through this hole and pull it tight, because then I'll be able to fish the wires into that area. So what I'm doing is pushing this wire. So I'm going to pull it straight up where these aileron wires come through. I'm going to try to, at least. But what I'm going to do is just solder on these little extensions so that I can have this servo wire be long enough to actually make its way all the way through the fuselage. And so for these extensions, I am going to add heat shrink because these are going to be in place. They're not going anywhere, and I'm not going to unsolder these. Okay, there we go. And another note, when you're heat shrinking this close to a plane, or one that's actually attached to the plane, don't apply heat this way because it's going to kind of mar up the foam, and the foam doesn't like super hot air. So I'm going to try to maybe hold out the plane like this, or just hold the heat so that it's not going directly onto the plane. It's going to go through it. But just be careful to not apply direct heat straight onto the foam. And now these wires are all nice and closed, and they're protected, and they're not actually going to short circuit each other by touching. Try and route these wires through to the top, and I'm going to use a tweezers and just kind of poke the wires into the holes and remove any foam if need be. Oh yeah, okay, I can see the wires all the way down through this middle gap here. So what I'm going to do is take my tweezers and try to pull them out. Oh, there we go. So I got one wire through, which is great. Now we just need the red and the black, which again, this is just a matter of looking through this bottom part until you can see the wires, which is kind of hard to do because they are... Oh, okay, there we go. I can see the red wire. Nice, okay. So now that they're through and almost pulled tight, you can see on this side, we don't want them to go across like that. We want them to go through the channels we made. So I'm gonna, while holding the wires on this side, I'm holding them gently, and then I can pull these wires through the channels we made. And so we're gonna get a little more slack, so we can pull it just a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, we've got these servo wires in this channel. So that's going to be the next step here. We've got the servo tape. You can see I'm just going through and laying the tape back down on top of everything. And just like that, I might need a little bit extra. Well, I'll leave that up because we're going to have to use this hole for the other side. But as you can see, we've completely covered up the servo wires and it's completely installed. Like, that looks pretty clean. And if I flip this over, we can see we've now got some nice wires poking through. We can just solder black to black, red to red, yellow to yellow, and then from there we can solder onto this adapter correct format. We've got all of our flap servos now connected to each other. Now that's great. We just need to attach the actual adapter onto those. We've got to remember, like I've been saying this whole time, these servos and these adapters aren't exactly the same. So you can see we got red and black wires in different spots. We have to deal with that, which just means we're going to go red to black, black to red, and yellow to yellow. And this time I've got a little bit bigger heat shrink, just a size bigger, because it's got to fit over a few wires. And I'm going to actually use quite a bit. Like, I'm going to cut this into thirds and use that whole thing just so we can make sure that these joints are secure and not going anywhere. Sweet. I think those all went together really well. We put this heat shrink on beforehand because now that we're done, we can just slide it over this joint for all three of them, heat shrink them down, and they should be good to go. But I think our next step is going to be getting these push rods back connected and then getting our board installed, which is super exciting because that means we're almost done. First off, we've got the rudder and the elevator push rods, which have to connect onto these servos. Now, which servo's which, I don't remember. Come on now. Rudder is on the blue wire side. Just say be careful, don't push too hard because it's really easy to break these little push rods. I've done it a few times. It's super annoying. Okay, so I've got one of them in, and now the fun part is the elevator must go the same way. Bam. Okay, I think we got both in place. So the rudder, the top, okay, sweet. We got them in place. Hopefully you saw that. I put in the elevator servo, or the elevator push rod first, and I was able to slide this whole board forwards, which gave me enough slack to move the rudder push rod, because the rudder is fixed in because of this tail wheel. It couldn't just be like free moving, or like I couldn't pull it all the way out. So I had to put it there. Okay, board's back connected. So we're going to take the push rod and bend it clockwise, pop that push rod through, and then unbend it, and it should snap into place. I guess snap might be a little exaggeration. It's going to move back into place. We've got that back installed, as you can see, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side here. We've got the rudder. Oh yeah, we're going to bend it down a little bit. There. So now the push rods are all installed. The aileron wire with the green dot goes on the plug that's further forward towards the nose. So we put that in and put this in. Okay, so aileron should be back in. So one last step, how do you actually connect your transmitter to the flap system? So right now we see we're all connected up, but I can't control the flaps. You see, looking good. So this is really easy. We're gonna have to click into our menu. We're gonna go down to System Setup. We are sure. Then we're gonna go down to Aircraft Type and change it from normal to one flap, one aileron, or one aileron, one flap. Click it. Then we're gonna go back to our main menu. We're gonna go back in and find this new menu, flap system. Once we're in flap system, we can go down to inhibit, click it, and then click whatever switch you want to use. So in this case, I want to use this top switch, so I'm just going to toggle it. You can see it found switch G. We're going to click on it again. This is where we find the positions where our flaps are going to be. So I'm going to go up to position 0, and I click that, and I'm going to bring it all the way up to 100 so that when my switch is down, the flaps are going to be down. So we're going to move that all the way up to 100. As you can see, as we move this, our flaps are slowly going down. And then we can go down to the middle, and now 0% is actually in the very middle. And so I want my flaps to be halfway in between up and down, so a little takeoff flap, so we're going to leave that at 0. And then for our top position, I want this flaps to be all the way up, so we can bring this to -100. And then one last thing to switch at the very bottom, speed. Instead of norm, I like to change it to 1 second just to give it a little delay, and it doesn't make it as snappy. But as you can see, we can test this now. Our flap should be up when the switch is up, in the middle when the switch is in the middle, and down when the switch is down. So just like that, we have our transmitter all set up to control the flaps. All right, so to start, we got elevator and rudder. Is that right? Looks right. We got ailerons. And then flaps. Look at that. That's everything working, right? Like, that's a plane if I've ever seen one. So you might be thinking, yeah, this looks all right, but the normal servos has little servo covers. So we went and designed little green servo caps that should just go right over the end here and should not only protect the servo from any debris when coming into land, but they kind of match the green of the plane pretty well. So I think it'll be looking fun. But all I'm going to do is hot glue these in. It should be really quick, really small, really careful. I added a little bit of extra room on the sides for just a little strip of hot glue on either side. Just gently press it in, covering up the majority of the gap that we created. And there, I can try to smooth out any of that excess that came around the sides, but that should be looking good. As you can see, a nice servo cap. And do the same thing on the other side. So there, now we've got some nice green servo caps that go on the bottom of this plane, which again, protect the servo and make it look a lot cleaner since we don't have that ugly startup stuff that we added. Plug in the motor wires. We have to fish, instead of having that come through here. Wow, that's a fun project. Fish that down through here. So we have, just like the stock, we've got the battery lead coming out the bottom. So that's a little cable management. And then lastly, we've got all this extra wire coming out through here. And let's see, do I want to go through the middle? So that goes through there. Camera wire, which is going to the other spare port, the digital channel port. This top port, topmost one, kind of hard to see, but that's just going to go right there. And if I should mention, if you want to add the FPV camera, we've got a whole tutorial on it. It's super easy. It's just poking a hole pretty much. And then if we just pop the top back on, that might be our whole process done. I guess we got to tape it back on, but we got a Voodoo. I'll tell a pretty short story, but a story nonetheless. With all the affiliate links we're putting in to our videos, I reached out to Horizon Hobby saying like, hey, it'd be real cool if we could be affiliates with you, because on their website they've got a little affiliate link like section. And we reached out, emailed, and they reached out saying, no, we don't want to be affiliated yet. Your channel's not big enough, which is almost direct words. They said more engagement. And I emailed them back saying, well, hey, we've sold dozens of these planes on Amazon. Like, if you guys want to be affiliated, I'd rather be directly affiliated with the actual manufacturer, but they haven't responded to that yet. So pretty much our channel's not big enough to be affiliated with the actual manufacturers, which I think is just bizarre. Like, we're selling your planes, or like we're doing stuff to your planes. We really like your planes. Can we be affiliated? No. But anyways, that's my pretty much the whole story. It's just, I tried, they said no. So I'll just tape this plane back together. I also emailed them saying like, hey, we're getting close to 1,000 subscribers. We're about 800 and change. I want to do a giveaway of a Voodoo or actually a Evo or a Crescendo, or one of the like main planes that we use and really like, and we want to do a giveaway. It's just not within our budget right now to just give away a plane. So we contacted them saying, hey, would you be able to sponsor that? Because that'd be really cool. It'd be able to give back. They haven't responded to that either. But if they're not willing to be affiliated, I'm guessing it might be a little tougher to have them donate a plane for the sake of giving it away to a subscriber. But either way, that's at least the stuff, the behind the scenes of the Inverted Aviators RC, what's going on that you don't see. But I'm just adding a whole bunch of tape to these seams just so that everything is locked down. And there's a Voodoo that's got all of our modifications. Without any further ado, let's give this a try. All right, right off the bat, it looks like it still flies, so that's our first big win so far. I'm just going to do a little pass here just to make sure everything is feeling good and trimmed out especially. We do have power wires right overhead, but that shouldn't be a problem. Trim it out. So we're flying smooth, and then I'm going to fly around here and deploy some flaps. We'll go full flaps just to see what it does. If it flies any slower or faster or whatever. The idea is that I'll fly slower with flaps deployed, and I can turn flaps up, and we'll rip around. So right off the bat, it feels normal. Actually, let's see, I'll turn safe off. I think that's safe off. I'll fly up a little bit, maybe do a little roll. Is that, I can't tell, is safe off? Let's see, I'm still trying to make sure I'm trimmed out correctly. I do seem that I'm pitching back a little bit, so I'll correct that. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to test this. I do feel like I'm a little still not trimmed out correctly. See, I'll turn flaps all the way on. Give it a little fly around. So this is full flaps deployed. Now, it is full flaps, but they are on the highest, or the lowest control arm. So I could make the flaps deploy even more. Whether or not I need them, that's, up to my own call. But still, I think the flaps experiment is a success so far. I guess I haven't landed yet, so I don't know how much easier it's gonna make it, but it seems like it's working fine, and it still flies relatively normal. I guess I haven't done much aerobatics yet. Am I on high rates? Let's see. That's high rates. Okay, that's why I wasn't rolling as fast. It's because I had low rates on. But I'll just keep flying this around. It doesn't feel any different or that much different. But I'm trying to fly around a new toy camera on the ground here. I got flaps up, just normal flying, safe off, high rates, just the normal stuff. Got a little inverted flight. But yeah, this is super cool. If you're looking to improve or at least modify your UMX Voodoo, flaps are the way to go. This is pretty fun, pretty smooth. I guess I could touch and go on this little path here. This is a new place, I haven't flown here before. But it's a nice little park, and I figured it's a beautiful day in November, so how could I not fly? So I guess I'll pass around here. There's me. And I'll just try to loop around this camera here. And I'll probably bring it into land, and we can get another battery, or I'll bring it into land, and we can finish out this mod. So I'm going to try to bring it in slower. How about that? That is flaps on the UMX Voodoo. But is it cool? Yes. Am I happy I did it? Absolutely. This is what we like to do on Inverted Aviators RC. Take fun planes and make them different. And so thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out all our other videos on this plane, other planes, the Voodoo, the Evo, the Crescendo, the Corsair. We do it all here. So thank you so much for watching, and stick around for more videos like this.